We are looking at the interviews of 10 of the best Gen 8 random battle players. So the first interview is with BoRida. So most of these questions are not related to Gen 8 random battles. So I'm skipping through most of these questions until we get to the good stuff. What kind of Pokemon do you like rolling the most in random battles? So BoRida is saying stall. Anything that stalls. Milotic, Porygon 2, Slow Pals. So of course the Milotic will have like Recover. It can be really cheesy and stally with like the Haze, Toxic. Just Toxic Recover can like single-handedly beat teams. And then even if it has Haze, Scald can just burn, and then even just Scald Recover can beat entire teams. And then you could even throw Ice Beam on that set. So all these are moves that Milotic gets in Ranbats. So yes, a very stally mon. Milotic is also good, just not even because it's like stally with Toxic, and just it can just be offensive, like with Scalds and Ice Beams, and just click Recover. Like it doesn't even exactly have to PP stall or Toxic stall. So it's kind of a lot like Ho-Oh in that regard. And then here you have a Porygon 2 as well. So I believe that's the really bulky one with Eviolite. Of course, again, that's just another Recover. That's even like more tanky than the Milotic. Harder to break through in general. Well, they're both extremely hard to break through. It just depends on the team. But it can even just paralyze with Discharge, of course, and then just keep clicking Recover. And then the opponent has a 75% chance to get paralyzed, so it can just do that, then get back up to full, and then switch out if necessary. But again, Toxic Stall Recover with that mon. Slow Pals. These interviews will take a long time to get through if I just keep talking, so I'll probably just try to speak a bit faster. So Slow Pals, of course, like Slowbro, Slow King, and the Galar forms. Yeah, very tanky with the Regenerator. Audino, again, a Regenerator mon. Most of the legendary birds, now that I think about it, Moltres, Articuno, Zapdos. Well, I think it's like half of the legendary birds are just tanky like that with Roost, Stall. And then the other half, like Galarian Zapdos, like in his image there, those are actually just offense. So if it's not Lugia, if it's not Stall, then it's just like hyper offense. But yeah, that's an interesting note that a lot of birds do like to stall. The slow quadruplets. Not sure exactly who he's talking about, but he's mentioning Regenerator. So, I mean, there are four mons with Regenerator. I guess you could say the two slows, and then also the two like grasses, like Amoonguss, Eldegoss. You would have a lot of other Regenerator mons though. And then he's saying, and the water types that have teleport. Like, of course, you would have Slowbro again. Other teleport mons would be like Xatu and Blissey, which is now one of the best moves in randoms. Yeah, I would say teleport is one of the best moves for sure, because you can always just get really good momentum with it. And you can even just tank a hit, because you don't want to tank a hit on your threat, but you can see what your opponent wants to do exactly, and then you can respond accordingly with teleport. Or if you want like a 0% chance that you take a hit on your offensive threat that you want to send in, you can just teleport into it. Um, so yeah, teleport is for sure one of the best moves in the game, I would say. And then he's saying when it's not on Xatu. I think I maybe disagree with that somewhat. I mean, Xatu is super good with Teleport, Roost, T-Wave, Psychic. I think I might even take Teleport over Heat Wave just for the really good momentum. Um, Heat Wave is just going to miss anyway. So the Xatu will just T-Wave, and then opponent will eventually get paralyzed, and it just roosts, um, and then usually it's pretty easy to predict what they want to go for, and then you can just go for a safe a teleport anyway. But I think I prefer that over the Heat Wave, because Xatu isn't exactly an offensive mon anyway. Like, even if it Dynamaxes, it's really weak because it's not boosted by Psychic Terrain. You don't really want to boost Dynamax Xatu unless if you have to. So I would really prefer something like Teleport over something offensive on it. And then he's saying, I'm a big proponent of spamming substitute. It's almost always a safe move and lets you figure out their item or get a free turn. I agree with that. I mean, I don't know about spamming substitute. I mean, you kind of want to just make the best decision at each point in the game. But I would definitely recommend using substitute. Like if you have multiple options to choose from, even though you're going to lose some HP from using substitute, if you aren't like 100% sure of what they want to do, then oftentimes it's a really good mid ground play because then you get to, of course, see exactly what they're going to do. Even though maybe you don't maximize the turn, but you don't minimize the turn either. So you always get something out of the turn just by clicking substitute. So I agree with that. Um, but yeah, substitute is also extremely good. It has many uses. I think I'm gonna make videos on just all of the moves in the game and just how they're effective and how they're used. So maybe I don't have to talk about that right now. And then on top of Leech Seed and Toxic, it's a real killer. Yeah, exactly. So he's just on the topic of stall this entire time. Leech Seed and Toxic, so definitely reminds me of a Venusaur set there. Venusaur is pretty fast. It can just spam Leech Seed sub. Doesn't even have to attack. So that Venusaur is one of those good mons that doesn't even have to attack the opponent at all and can still like beat entire teams essentially. Or Venusaur plus one or two mons can beat an entire team. Especially with Sludge Bomb too, just getting a poison, kind of similar to what he's saying with the Toxic. But yeah, that's I see what he's saying about stall being really good in that you oftentimes get a very high probability of winning if you just roll stall mons and you don't even have to predict, so you don't even have to really play the game in any risky way. You can just get 100% win rate or a near 100% win rate with stall is sort of what I'm gathering from what he's saying. Whereas if you don't have stall mons, then you can't really, you're at a risk every time you're pivoting. And you can't really scout the opponent's team very well if you don't have any stalling mons. Whereas you can do both of these things plus play and more. Plus you have more leeway in your plays when you do have stall mons on your 6-mon team. So he's saying the real fun of Rans is figuring out how to win, and being good at stalling means keeping your team as healthy as possible. Maybe I'll just check real quick to see if I'm still recording. Yeah, so this is still recording. Uh, Giving you more options as you figure out the weaknesses of the other team. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Maybe I even want to read that again because that's really important what he just said there. Because it's fun to actually get like these stall teams because you really get to figure out how to win with them. It's more of a creative process, more of a creative good game. And being good at stalling means keeping your team as healthy as possible. Right. And it gives you more options as you figure out the weaknesses of the other team. Right, so you probably want to roll stall. It's good to roll stall, especially if you're, playing opponents who aren't as knowledgeable as of regards to the game as you are, because then you can really increase your chance of winning. Whereas if you're playing I guess even if you're playing a really good opponent, but a really good opponent will know basically all of the capabilities of the stall mon, the same capabilities that you would know. Whereas a new player, maybe they know a few capabilities of all the stall mons that you bring to the table, but they're less likely to know and be able to predict every single turn as well as, if you're facing a good opponent who would be able to. So I'd say the gap in GXE, in the probability of winning widens if you're a good player with stall against, a less good player than if you're, a good player with stall versus another really good player of equal caliber. And so then he says it lets you be really creative, like teleporting into mons with leftovers to heal back one of your mons very slowly. Yeah, so that's of course a good strategy right there. Because you teleport out, the mon you want to go into can't possibly take any damage because it won't be hit by the opponent, because you're using teleport. And then it'll always get back 6%, and then you can go back into your mon, which already probably got back some health from Regenerator, and then you could just keep spamming that combination while not taking any damage at all, while healing one of your mons slowly. And then he says, or PP stalling, pressure point stalling their big bungas without them realizing it. Yeah, so I've definitely seen some very good plays with that where you actually can win just by stalling out your opponent's PP. So that's one of the very intelligent strategies that you can employ to win, and maybe that is necessary to employ for you to actually win the game. Like if you're reversed, it's like I remember seeing a game on Boris Huang's like 9 hour long video where he effectively PP stalled their Lugia. In fact, he was actually playing that game very, very well, where he was able to paralyze the Lugia and switch back and forth between his Regenerator Slowbro and his Celebi, and his Celebi was alternating Nasty Plot and Recover, and he was just switching in between those two mons to eventually beat down a paralyzed Lugia by pressure stalling the Lugia and threatening to set up Nasty Plots at the same time. So it looked like he was actually going to lose that game, probably unless if he knew to employ this PP stall strategy. And so now he's saying basically any mon that gives you options on how to use it, usually stally mons, is fun. Another reason why I like DMAX 2, really glad Unknown isn't in it. LOL. They did level balancing really well this gen. Yes, of course, because the mons in Gen 8 random battles are all different levels. If it's like a legendary, it'll be a lower level. If it's like a Maractus, it'll be like level 97. Just to make each mon, so basically a Maractus, like a kind of trash mon, can actually beat a legendary mon, because it'll actually have better stats because it's at a higher level. So they balanced all the mons really well. I agree with what he's saying. So he also says that DMAX is actually a really good thing for this reason, in that you have a lot of options, in Gen 8. So that's actually why Gen 8 is actually one of the most skillful gens, and I think I would agree. He isn't quite saying that, so I'm not putting words in his mouth, but I think Gen 8 is a really skillful gen for that reason, is because when you Dynamax, you get like 4 new moves on your Mon, and then they have different effects, and they have different power and abilities than your if you don't have the DMAX capability, and there are a lot of new mechanics that you get with the DMAX. So basically there's overall more options that you have in the game, which is I think why the better player has a better chance of winning. The more skillful you are at the game, the better chance you have on average at winning in Gen 8. So Gen 8 is actually a more skillful gen, and it rewards the more skilled player, I would say. Again, because you have more options overall with how to play the game. So if you're more skilled, then you'll know how to use effectively the larger number of options that you have than if you're like a less skilled player. You won't even know what those options are, and you won't really use them as effectively. And again, that's why the more skilled player will win more likely. So that's why Gen 8 is maybe one of the best gens to be good at, because it's more like chess at that point than with any other, way to play Pokemon. In fact, I'm going to argue in a later video that Gen 8 is actually the best gen. Gen 8 random battles in particular is actually the best, most skillful gen. Because some people, they don't really know what they're talking about. They say, DMAX is broken, and that's why, it's not a good gen. But in fact, you see the GXC on Gen 8 players is the highest on Gen 8 random battles. It's like the highest out of any format, I believe. It's like 94 GXE. A lot of players have like 94, 95 GXE. Whereas like on OU, it's like you're lucky if you get like 88 GXE in like Gen 9 OU. So what's the next question here? On the other hand, are there aspects of Rance that you dislike or that irk you? Pretty uncommon, but the Zoroark level bug, knowing it's Zoroark can be unfortunate. Oh, in fact, that's something I have to check for myself. I think I recently made a video with Zoroark in it. It wasn't a video about Zoroark, but I had Zoroark in it. So I think I can double check if what he's saying is correct. So Zoroark, there's like two, I believe it might be a different level based on male, female, because one of them's like 230 speed and then one of them's like 198 speed. I'm not talking about scarf sets. So the Zoroarks are like level 70 something. So I assume what he's talking about is if you see a Mon that's like level 79 and that's the Zoroark level, like if you see like a level 79 Maractus, then maybe it's actually Zoroark, and then that's how you know it's Zoroark. So then I have to double check to see if that's correct though, because then that's something you have to be aware of if you want to be, really good at Gen 8 random battles. Then he says sometimes I think it'd be nice if they added more NFEs that could be viable with the right level balancing. Um, if they added more NFEs, what exactly does that mean? I think Onyx with defense curl rollout body press could be legit. Yeah, that's not in the current gen. I don't think they're going to add it either. Onyx isn't even a mon currently in Gen 8 random battles. But I think this interview was maybe a long time ago too. This was like the first of 10 interviews that they have on this Smogon forum. So maybe he was talking about hoping they would fix that, at the start of Gen 8. But Gen 8 is sort of, it finished a few months ago, and now, of course, everyone's on to Gen 9. So it's unlikely Gen 8 will really change much, if at all, in the future. And then he says, but the game is great as is, which I agree with, and I fully accept that I will lose my Pikachu to their League Doug Trio turn 1. In fact, you don't have to. You can even Dynamax Pikachu, Dynamax Surf. I've seen that, well, I'm not sure. I'd have to calc if Pikachu goes down or if it lives on 1% all the time. But I would, I've seen before though. In fact, I've done it before where they have lead Doug, and then I actually Dynamax turn 1 just to beat Doug Trio because Earthquake beats like most of my team, and Doug Trio just outspeeds most of my team. So I've seen that before with like a Raichu, a Lola Raichu. They did just Dynamax, Max Mindstorm, just Life Orb, just to OHKO the Doug Trio after the EQ, which can often be a good play. So it's not even a bad thing that your opponent reveals they have Doug Trio turn 1 and you get trapped with, say, a Lola Raichu turn 1. It's not even a bad thing a lot of the time that they are. It's actually oftentimes worse for your opponent because then, your opponent is basically, 99% of the time they're always going to quick Earthquake just to get the KO. But then they're at a risk because then you can go into some flying type offensive threat, and there are a lot of extremely strong Dynamax flying types. So that's another reason why Gen 8 is just really good with the D-Max mechanic. Because, yeah, otherwise I would agree that it's way more broken and unfortunate, if your opponent leads Doug Trio. If you didn't have the D-Max. And then he says, or if I lose to a crit miss sometimes. Yeah, I mean, that happens in every gen, though. That's not a Gen 8 thing. I mean, literally every gen, and even not even random battles, you are going to be losing to crit misses all the time. So that's not, I mean, just in terms of Gen 8 or random battles or anything, that's not exactly. Well, I guess what he is sort of saying is that in Gen 8 random battles, you're forced into having some mons that have low accuracy. Whereas if you're building your own team, then you probably don't want to have any mons that have low accuracy. You don't want to have any moves on your mons that have low accuracy, or maybe only 90, 95% as the lowest accuracy, which I agree with. But then again, I also would say that the game is just more fun, when you do have hacks and you do have less moves, and it's still extremely creative because you're still forced to make your best play every turn, no matter what mon you're given, no matter if you get hacks, at the end of the day, it's just about making your best play possible, and it doesn't really matter if you get hacked. I mean, the only thing that matters, about getting hacked, is just you getting pissed off and being a baby, I guess, not being in control of your emotions, not being a good player, not being a player who's, calm all the time and able to handle, upsets like that. And then he says, honestly, I think Rans is as good as it could be, which I pretty much agree with. I mean, of course, small things can be tweaked. And then he says, besides not having Onyx, if Rans was designed exactly how I wanted it to be, I don't think I'd enjoy it as much. Well, yeah, I mean, I'd probably keep everything the same, but maybe make really minor edits. So then what's the next question? How often do you use Randbat's tools, the Calc Browser Extension Tooltip, Set Odds API, while you battle, and how much do they help you? I almost never use the calc. I've played so many games that I can just eyeball percents now. I wouldn't really agree with that unless if you prefer to play that way, if it makes you happy to play that way. But I mean, there isn't really any reason to just eyeball things all the time. I mean, sometimes you kind of have to when you're running low on timer, and it's a good skill to have, especially, if you're low on timer, then you don't have time to run a calc, or you know that you'll have to run, two or three calcs in a row. You won't have time to each turn to do all the calcs that are necessary, so you need to be able to eyeball some things. Um, but I would say that you want to use calc as much as you can get away with, because then you'll just have a higher and higher probability of winning the game the more you use calc each and every turn. I would even recommend just using calc decks and not even running, a traditional calc on the Gen 8, the traditional Gen 8 random battles calculator, which will take more time because you have to, click to switch the browser, then you have to input everything. But if you use calc decks, then you can just eyeball it, because you actually just look at it and it's right there next to the game, and it tells you right there without you having to input anything most of the time. So it honestly is just as fast. It's just thinking in your head. It takes like less than 1 second, basically, is what I'm saying. And so then he says the set odds and browser extension I've never seen. Though I do wonder if it takes away the fun having these tools at your disposal. I mean, if you do wonder, then I think you should just try it. Then you can be sure, if it does or does not make it more fun. I think for me, it definitely makes it more fun, because it's optional anyway. So I mean, you might as well just like try it out to see if it is in fact more fun for you to play with it. It's not like some big, complicated thing to set up. It takes literally like 2 seconds to set these things up. The calc decks maybe takes a couple minutes to download that, but then it's up and running. And then the traditional random battles Gen 8 calc, that one literally only takes like 5 seconds, to navigate to, for your first time, and it's very intuitive how to use that. I think it does actually make it much more fun for me, because then I can pull off interesting strategies using the calc. Because sometimes it says, your mon lives, the high roll is only doing 99% to your mon. I've seen that before, so then I know that I can just stay in, whereas your opponent will think, oh, he's definitely switching because he goes down, whereas I can just get up my stealth rock, in their face. So I can make interesting plays, and I can, have more fun, I think, when I'm actually calculating how to do things. And of course, you're going to win more too if you're calculating, and then that's always more fun. And you're also just making the better plays, so it's also more fun from that standpoint. Just, not being, a bad player, I guess. And then he's saying, what's your favorite random battle, blah, blah, blah. I don't think I need to read that. What kind of advice would you give to these new players, whether they want to improve their battle skills? Um, so, I'd say for any activity you plan to spend time on, recognize what your goals are and time manage accordingly. Yeah, precisely. I would precisely agree with that. Like, what's your goal with Gen 8 random battling? Is it just to have fun? And what's your definition of having fun? Is it, winning? I would say for maybe half the people or whatever, it's like, it's only really fun if you're really good, you've truly become a master, and you're always making the best plays possible. I would say that's maybe like half the people or whatever want to become like that. And then maybe half the people just want to, it doesn't really matter if they win or lose. It's just, or like how good they are. It's more just about, the dopamine rush, the dopamine hits of, winning a few games here and there, or the roller coaster of emotions that you get from, winning, losing, missing a focus blast that would have won you the game, and it's just more of a relaxing type of thing. It isn't really about win or lose. It's more just, having fun, clicking some moves, maybe beating half of your opponents, and again, the roller coaster and the ride. So I would say, yeah, you want to choose which of these two, you want to be, which of these two brings you the most happiness. And maybe it's even, half the time I want to be really good, and half the time I just want to click buttons. And so then he says, any lofty goal I've ever had with RANs whether it was getting a really high rating, win slash loss, slash GXE, whatever, it brought me way less happiness than I expected as a function of how much time it took. Yeah, so he's basically saying, he didn't really find that much enjoyment or happiness just from becoming like as best of a. He isn't wording it the same way I am, so maybe he has the a different goal than what I'm recommending because he's saying, getting a really high rating, but in my experience, it isn't about, you don't want to focus on getting a really high rating because obviously then you're always going to be sad even if you're one of the best players. I mean, well, you aren't always going to be sad. I'm just saying it's likely that you're probably not going to be content. I'm not going to make a claim that you're going to be sad because I don't know. But what I am claiming is that your goal, because what I was actually saying wasn't like his wording. So he's saying something different. What I'm saying is that you want to become like the best chess player that you can at the game. So you want to figure out and always learning it. You don't even want to necessarily maybe even play as much as just studying the game and to really learn to try to perform the best move every game, because it's not about winning or losing or GXE. It's about, because those will come later. You will be the way to be the best. The way I'm talking about is just to focus on making your best play every turn. And at that point, you're always going to lose the game, like 10% of the time, even if you're really good. But if you made the best move possible every single turn, then you can say that, okay, I'm really happy with how I played that game. It doesn't matter that I lost. You can always say that, even if you lose, and so that's a bit different than what he's saying. And then he's saying, but these goals weren't about the big numbers. They were ultimately about boosting my self-esteem and about being recognized and validated. Yeah, I mean, I agree with him saying, I guess, that but these goals weren't about yeah, because I think he's sort of admitting that he maybe had like lower self-esteem, maybe was more looking to be recognized and validated. I'm not trying to put words in his mouth. I'm just trying to read, like, I'm just trying to interpret the sentence that he's trying to say here. And then he's saying, knowing that my ability to strategize and play under pressure was probably improved from the tens of thousands of games I've played yeah, that's probably about I don't know if I've played tens of thousands. I've maybe played tens of thousands of games at this point, so maybe I'm a bit in the same camp he is. But yeah, for Gen 8 random bats, if that's what he means. He's played has brought me some solace in the empty pursuit. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Of big numbers, big recognition, but for real, no cap. The real treasure was the fun and friends we made along the way. Yeah, so that's always important. And then he says, of course, if your goal is to become involved in the community and have fun, I don't need to tell you how to do that. Okay, and then he says bye. Yes, that was a pretty good interview. Dang, this session was pretty long. We can just check in the close real quick. When this was exactly posted. So it was October 14, 2022.